Welcome back to part 2 of the Duros species. We left off with the enslavement of the entire Duros species by the Rakata's infinite empire. The slaves were used in the construction of the Star Forge around 30,000 BBY, and it had been thought that the Duros had been totally conquered, but what the Rakata didn't realize was that the Duros were using the opportunity to learn from their interstellar overlords and study their more advanced technologies. Thankfully for the Duros, they didn't have to tolerate their cruel masters for long, as in 25,200 BBY, the Rakata were taken out by a plague that only affected them, and with their numbers hindered, the Duros overthrew the Rakata and took back their planet. They created a hereditary monarchy, and later, after the fall of the Infinite Empire, the Duros were able to reverse engineer the technology left by the Rakata. This resulted in the creation of a new hyperspace technology that rivaled that of the Corellians, and this also meant that for the first time the Duros could leave their home world. With this key, they quickly took to the skies and began to connect to other planets, such as Coruscant and Corellia. With this connection to the core worlds, and with the help of the Corellians, they built the first arm of the Corellian trade spine. This invention of a hyperdrive helped jettison the Duros into a golden age, which started in the year 25,053 BBY, under the rule of Queen Rana Mas Triel. They were a core founder, and built large shipyards and space docks in the planet's orbit. But that monarchy was eventually abolished in favor of their more current governmental system, which is made up of a collection of corporations. During the earliest wave of this expansion is when the Duros colonized Neimoidia, and about 10,000 years later, the Neimoidians were considered a separate species in 15,000 BBY. Duros Decline began in 3,961 BBY, when the planet was ravished during the Mandalorian Wars. The Mandalorians invaded many of the colonies of the core planets, using thousands of basilisk war droids. The Duros faced an upward battle in rebuilding, and took another hit during the Sith Wars when their colony on Harpori was wiped out by the Cox Cruel in the year 1003 BBY. 220 years before the Battle of Yavin marked the beginning of the Duros Industrial Age. The Duros began building the food processing plants that would eventually pollute the Duros atmosphere to the point that the population had to relocate to 20 cities that orbit the system. In 20 BBY, 2 years after the start of the Clone Wars, the Confederacy launched an operation to capture Duro called Dirge's Lance. This campaign was a success, and the planet quickly fell under Confederate control. The fall of such an important core planet forced others in the Galactic Republic, like Corellia, to up their defenses in fear of being overtaken. After the Clone Wars, the Empire took what was left of the Duros' natural resources, sucking the planet dry, and forcing the few inhabitants that remained on its surface to permanently flee off-world. The Empire tried to pit the Duros against the Corellians, and tried to lump Duros space into that of Corellia so that they weren't considered an independent system. With the fall of the Empire, the New Republic was able to liberate the planet, but not before the Tirkum Dam burst, flooding the nearby valley with toxic waste, making yet another catastrophic environmental disaster on this planet. The New Republic also placed the system back into the Duros sector, no longer having to be under the yoke of the Corellians. A mission was undertaken to clean the atmosphere as best as they could, but sadly most of the planet was still uninhabitable. Imperial remnant forces were successful in taking the planet back, but through even more fighting, Duro was eventually liberated again by the New Republic. Throughout all this back and forth and changing of the planet from the hands of the Empire to the Republic, many of the heads of the planet's largest corporations didn't really seem to care, and just tried to focus on ways that they can get an edge over rival corporations, mostly focusing their efforts on controlling a majority of the shipyards. All this time it was your average Duros who suffered the most, but surprisingly, their race was actually benefited from the invasion of the Yuuzhan Vong. After having just been recaptured by the New Republic, the Yuuzhan Vong swooped in and quickly conquered Duro, which seems like a pretty terrifying thing, but wanting to get the most out of their new acquisition, they reversed centuries of pollution in just 2 years of their rule. Which brings us to the last historical events that we know of this planet, being that after its liberation by the Galactic Federation of Free Alliances, the Yuuzhan Vong were chased away, and the Duros were able to finally return home, and the planet of Duro was considered a lush and beautiful world. So that's it for the Duros, and there aren't a lot of behind-the-scenes facts, other than in the story Missions from Mount Yoda. Female Duros are depicted with long ponytails, even though, according to all other sources, females and males were both supposed to be bald. So that's it for the Duros species. If you liked it, go ahead and hit that like button, and if you want to check out our social media, or ways that you can help support this channel, be sure to check out the description down below. If you want to see more, be sure to hit that subscribe button and hit the bell icon so that you get notifications. But more important than all that, remember, the Yuuzhan Vong did some good, and the Force will be with you, always.